if your value is $50 per hour and you've got some task that you do on a regular basis, which could be outsourced for $5 an hour, is it a good use of your time to be spending your time doing that task? An example of this might be social media. So maybe you've got a social media page, a Facebook page, or an Instagram page, or something related to your business, and you're publishing content on it each week to sort of engage or to grow a follower base, a subscriber base. That is something that you can absolutely outsource for $5 an hour or less.
You're listening to The Growth Booth, the show focused on achieving lifestyle freedom through online businesses. Whether you're looking for step-by-step strategies to start building an online business, simple game plans to grow your business, or proven lifestyle freedom frameworks, you are in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the thousands of listeners already in growth mode.
Aidan here, welcome to episode 18 of The Growth Booth, where today we are building on what we started to discuss last week in episode number 17, which was about outsourcing. Now, today though, we're taking it to the next level because I'm going to be sharing with you the ultimate 10-step process for hiring a virtual assistant. We're going to be getting down into the more granular details and, like I say, building on what we discussed in episode number 17. Now, if you did miss episode 17, head over to thegrowthbooth.com. You're going to be able to listen to that episode, and you're also going to be able to download a detailed infographic that shares a high-level overview of the key considerations to keep in mind when outsourcing. Now, outsourcing and hiring a VA, the reason that you might want to do that is because it can shorten the path to winning at the game of business. The business owner's game, as stated by Chuck Blakeman, is to make more money in less time. And to win at that game, you need to be able to be more productive. And to win at that game, you need to be able to operate at your highest and best use of your time, your HBUT, your highest and best use of your time. And this is really, really important. And there is a 3-step process that you can use to identify the value of the tasks that are happening in your life and your business, and then decide which things should be the first things for you to outsource. And you can systematically go about knocking these off one by one by one, okay? So that 3-step process is to, first of all, determine a value per hour for yourself. What is your time worth? And I'll talk more about this in just a second. The second step is then to outline the process. So to outline the different processes that you've got in your business that you would potentially like to outsource. And another way of thinking about these is to outline the different cogs in the machine. And then thirdly is to cost out the different tasks, or to assign a value to each of the tasks. So let's talk about step number 1 here. Step number 1 is to work out what is your value per hour. Now, there are a few different ways that you can do this. The first is just to say, well, what do you currently earn? And if you work a full-time day job, then you can easily work this out because you can just figure out what your hourly rate is. An example of this, if you earn $80,000 per year and you work 48 weeks, that would be $1,666 per week, and that works out to be $104 per hour. So if you work a day job where that fits that criteria, we're making $80,000 a year, working 48 weeks, 40 hours per week, then you know that when you are working, you are earning $104 per hour. And that might be your baseline, and that might be what you say your time is worth. Another way of looking at that, though, is just to say, what's the minimum that you're willing to work for? And this could be any number that you want. You might say, look, if a task can be done by someone else for under $25 per hour, then I'm not going to do it. I'm going to hand it off to that person. Or another way of looking at this is to say, what do you project yourself to earn in the future? And once you know that number, maybe that number could be the line in the sand that you draw, or what you say your time is worth. I think a good way of doing it, though, just to begin with, is to have a number in mind below which you are going to move mountains to be able to have someone else do that task for you. So I like to think of this value per hour as being like a line in the sand, and investing money is necessary here. But investing money in such a way that is going to allow you to make more money should be absolutely fine with everyone, and that's how you grow a business, and that's how you get ahead and win at the business owner's game or the game of business. So if your value is $100 per hour, let's just bring this back a little bit. If your value is $50 per hour and you've got some task that you do on a regular basis, which could be outsourced for $5 an hour, is it a good use of your time to be spending your time doing that task? An example of this might be social media. So maybe you've got a social media page, a Facebook page or an Instagram page or something related to your business, and you're publishing content on it each week to sort of engage or to grow a follower base, a subscriber base. That is something that you can absolutely outsource for $5 an hour or less. However, if your time is valued at $50 per hour, then are you wasting it by spending it doing that kind of a task? I would say that in a way you actually are, because your time is limited. So you can be spending 1 hour doing social media posts, or you could be spending 1 hour doing something else which is going to accelerate the growth of your business. And that's the way to look at it. And we'll get to how you can sort of map out the processes and assign a task right now, actually, because that's what we're covering in step 2 and step number 3. So just to reiterate there, step 1 was to work out what your value is per hour. This is something that you can work out pretty easily. And then step 2 is to map out a process. So what I mean by this is to identify what are all the cogs in the machine of your business. And if you've got an e-commerce store, for example, then maybe the different processes that go into making that e-commerce store work are things like doing product research, creating a product listing. And by this, I mean creating a page on your website that's got your product listed. Perhaps the third cog in the machine is running ads, so driving traffic to your website. It might be then generating sales, and then another cog or another process that you have to go through might be fulfilling orders. And this is what you can sort of map out. And I actually like to map this out on a visual flow chart. And it doesn't matter if you sketch it on a piece of paper, it's fine, but map these different things out. And typically, most processes don't have that many most systems don't have that many different processes to them. So I just gave you 5 examples, and those 5 examples are, sort of at the core of most e-commerce businesses. So that's process mapping, and that can be really valuable. And the thing that makes it even more valuable, though, is when you start to assign a value for each of those different parts of the process. So, for example, product research. Let's say you've got an e-commerce store and you sell lots of different types of e-commerce products. Product research might have a value of $10 per hour. And I say it has a value of $10 per hour because you can have someone else do that job for you at the required level by paying $10 an hour. Creating a listing, so creating a page on an e-commerce store, and that might mean doing some work with images. It might mean doing a little bit of copywriting, creating a description and a title and different bits and pieces for the product. That might have a task value of $30 per hour because it might require more specialized talent. Okay, running ads, so maybe running Facebook ads or Instagram ads or YouTube ads or something like that. That's also a more specialized task when compared to something like product research, and that might have a value of $40 per hour. And then you've got something like generating sales. Now that task might have a value of $100 per hour. Fulfilling orders that come in might have a value of $10 per hour. So you've mapped out this sort of flow chart, if you like. You've identified what the different cogs are, and now you've assigned a task value to each one of them. And this gives you a visual guide that you can use, and then you can decide which of those tasks you want to remove permanently from your shoulders, and you can have someone else do it, and you do this by outsourcing. Now, my business exploded when I started to understand the power of outsourcing. When I started outsourcing, when I started hiring help, when I started getting 10 plus hours of work done every night while I was asleep, that's when my business started exploding. And I can remember vividly the point when that happened. It was like night and day. So multiplying help is a growth mechanism. It's a faster way to learn. So at that point, you're really multiplying what you can do by leveraging other people's talent. And you can use a virtual assistant for all kinds of different things. A virtual assistant is generally accepted as being someone who's a bit of a generalist, a jack of all trades, and they can sort of swoop in and do all kinds of different bits and pieces for you. So I've had my virtual assistants do all kinds of different things for me, from creating documents, from product research or any kind of research, from adding products to stores, to personal arrangements like organizing flights and arranging hotels and those kind of things. You can have help with family logistics, help with a calendar. If you're someone who needs to take bookings, take meetings or consultations, then you can absolutely get some help with your calendar. Data analysis, design, all kinds of home-related tasks. So, cooking, cleaning, running different errands, admin, accounting, taxes. Most things that are not your highest and best use of your time can be outsourced. And you can also outsource anything that pisses you off, anything that you just decide that you don't want to do anymore. Well, that's a great candidate, as good a candidate as anything for outsourcing. Now, I did mention that a virtual assistant tends to be a jack of all trades, and the other type of person that you can hire is a specialist. And I spoke a little bit more about this in the last episode of The Growth Booth, and you can see that by going to thegrowthbooth.com and looking at episode number 17. However, what I'm mostly focused on in this episode today is the jack of all trades. It's the generalist, it's the virtual assistant. And in my mind, the absolute best place to find a virtual assistant is on onlinejobs.ph. You can use the different platforms that I mentioned in episode 17, and there are a whole bunch of them. However, onlinejobs.ph is really the best way to find a virtual assistant because it's fast, it's efficient, there's an amazing marketplace of tens of thousands of people who are looking for work. You can get really good quality if you know what to look for. It's simple, and you can get plenty of applications in 24 hours or even 48 hours. 24 to 48 hours is when typically how long it takes me to get a few dozen applicants for a virtual assistant position. It's not free the way that I do it. However, it's a very small cost, $69 to use the process that I'm about to outline here for you. But I really believe that it's worth the investment of $69 because this transforms the way that most people seek out hiring a virtual assistant to what I consider to be the ultimate way, the ultimate 10-step process to hiring a virtual assistant. And I think it'll become pretty obvious in just a second why this is so powerful. And this is a system that you can set up one time and then use it over and over again if you want to. So it does have a one-time $69 fee for onlinejobs.ph to get a paid membership there. And that is so that you can include links in your project listing, in your advertisement, if you like, for hiring a VA, and you'll see why you need them in just a second. So right now, I'm going to go through the 10 steps, and I'll make sure that these 10 steps are included along with the show notes at episode number 18 of The Growth Booth. So head over to The Growth Booth after you've listened to this, and you'll be able to find the notes and, of course, these 10 steps as well. Now, step number one is to determine your needs. And to do this, you need to map out those processes like I shared earlier in this episode. And then once you've identified a couple of things that you'd like to outsource, that at that point you're ready to move on to the second step, which is to create what I call a filter form. Now, a filter form is where someone will go to once they've read your job description inside onlinejobs.ph, they're going to click a link and they're going to go to this filter form, which asks them a bunch of questions. And I'll share what those specific questions are at the show notes at episode number 18 of The Growth Booth. But they include things like what's your name, what's your email address, what is your salary. So I don't say I'm willing to pay $4 per hour. I ask them what their salary is and I tell them that that's negotiable. I ask them about their best achievements in life, their background, and I also give them limitations. So I give them a 140 character limitation so that so that I can get clear and concise, short information, which I can then quickly and easily filter. So again, just to reiterate, step number one is determine what your needs are. Step number two is to create one of these filter forms. Step number three is to subscribe to onlinejobs.ph, and you can do that, and you want to get the $69 plan at $69 a month. However, you're only going to use it for a few days and then you'll cancel, so you don't need to pay again the second month. That filter form that I mentioned in step 2, just to sort of clear something up there, this is a form, like a survey form, and you can create these for free using the likes of Google Forms. Crowdsignal.com is another one that we use, which I think is free as well. And basically, it's just a way that people can go to a web page and input their information. And that information then nicely comes into a form which you can see, all the applicants in one place. So determine your needs, create a filter form, subscribe to onlinejobs.ph, and then you put your publication on onlinejobs.ph, and then you're done with onlinejobs.ph. You don't go there again to make any other changes. You're going to start getting applicants coming into your sheet, because in the job posting, you've got a link that says don't reply to this job posting inside of onlinejobs.ph. Instead, head over to this link. Okay. You also ask them things like how fast is their internet on that filter form, how many hours per week are they willing to work, are they willing to jump on a video call with you, and these questions are all designed to help weed people out. So if someone is not willing to get on a video call with me, then I'm not going to hire them, because I need to be able to have that kind of communication with them. I need to be able to see and talk to them and make sure that the person I'm hiring is really who they say they are. And you can learn a lot by getting on video calls with people. So the next thing you want to do is sort your applicants in the sheet. So by virtue of using this filter form, you're going to start collecting all of this information that will be in one nice, easy to use sheet, and then you can compare and contrast the different applicants that you've got. And when you do this, you can start to sort the people that you want to work with. So, for example, you can filter them as a first sort of pass based on what they're saying their hourly rate is. And then you can start to sort of weed people out, because you might see that they don't have quite the level of English that you're looking for, or maybe they can only work 10 hours a week and you're looking for someone who's full-time. So ultimately, though, what you want to get to is where you've got 5 or 6 different applicants that you can actually test with a simple test job. And that test job might cost you $5 or $10 or something like that. So it's not a lot of money, but it's going to save you a huge amount of money in actually the short term. So you sort the applicants on this sheet and you set up a test task. Setting up that test task would be step number 6. And this is something simple that's going to allow you to gauge the quality of their work and the speed. And it's important, because if someone says they are $5 an hour and someone else says they are $2 an hour, that doesn't tell you how good of a job they are, or how good they are at doing a job, and it doesn't tell you how fast they are either. So the person that's $5 an hour might be 5 times faster than the person that's $2 an hour, so they end up being cheaper. So this is one of the reasons why a setup task, a sort of a test task, I should say, is so important. And it also gives you the ability to sort of gauge how strong they are in different areas. And a typical test task that I do will normally be aligned and relevant to what I ultimately want them to end up doing for me. So, for example, if they're going to be working on my e-commerce business, I might have them give me recommendations about a page that I'm selling products on. I might get them to research an example of one of my competitors who's got a page that looks better than mine. I might get them to create a simple ad using Canva, which is image design software, online based, an image ad that I can use to if I wanted to run an ad. Now, I'm not expecting them necessarily to be an e-commerce expert or a design expert, but by having them do this kind of a job, it allows me to gauge how good they actually are. So that's step number 6. And step number 7 is to review the task results. So typically, if I've chosen 6 people to do the test, 5 of them might actually do it. That's fine. One of them didn't want to do it for some reason. But now I can go and review how well the different 5 people have done, and I will then pay them for the task. And this is step number 9, is paying them for the task. And one of the reasons that I want to do this, because people would oftentimes just do this task for free because they want to get the job, but I actually want to pay them because I want to make sure they can receive money. I've had issues in the past where I've hired someone and then they've had issues receiving money, and it just becomes a headache, more of a headache for me. So I want to make sure they can actually receive money. I want to make sure that they can send me an invoice in PayPal. And once they've done that, I also I pay them, and I ask them how much they actually received. So if they invoiced me for $12 and they received $9 because of different PayPal fees or something, then I will tell them, next time you give me an invoice, add $3 on, because I want to be covering the cost of sending the money for you. It's just one less thing. It's not much for me, but it can make a big difference to them. That's step number 8, is to pay for the task. And then number 9 is a video interview. So by now, 5 people have completed the task, and maybe 3 of them did a really good job. So I won't necessarily interview all 5 people. I'll interview the people who I feel deserve to go through to the next step, who have made the cut to go to the next step. So it's sort of like a drawn out job interview. It doesn't actually take that long. It could be all over in 24 hours, but it's a systematic process that I go through. So that'll be a video interview, and it'll be on Skype normally. And it's just a way to get to know them more and to gauge what their spoken English is like, and again to connect with them a little bit. And then the 10th step is to hire 2 people for the job. Now, I may only need 1 person, but I'll hire 2 people, and I'm going to give them a little bit more work to figure out who is the person that I'm ultimately going to end up hiring. And if it's a virtual assistant, these are things that these are people that are not expensive to hire for the most part. You might be looking at $3, $4, $5 an hour. So I think in most cases you can make the case that it makes sense to hire a couple of people. Once that's all been said and done, I then move into an induction process, which is a little bit like onboarding. It's a way that I bring them into the organization and make sure that they understand how I want to work with them and what I expect from them. And by the way, I should add that I will give you an example job posting in the notes for this show. So if you go to thegrowthbooth.com, episode number 18, you'll be able to get an example of a job posting and an example of the kind of test task that I would ask someone to do. So you get a bunch more resources there. The induction process, or the onboarding, will typically cover multiple different things. I like to use Trello. That's trello.com for managing my virtual assistants and for organizing projects. And this tends to work well for me because it allows me to see at a glance which are the projects that are being worked on, who's doing what's in the pipeline. I can add more things to the pipeline easily, and it allows me to communicate well with my team members. I can also create checklists. So I can have a task which might be creating an image, for example, and if that task is something that's repetitive, then it'll have a checklist associated with it. So Trello is the platform that I like to use for organizing work with a virtual assistant, and I oftentimes, depending on what they're going to be doing, I get them to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and these non-disclosure agreements are, pretty standard. I don't use them all the time, but if you do a Google search for non-disclosure agreement, you'll find templates that you can use. I only use these when the virtual assistant is going to be working on things that are sensitive, that maybe I don't want being shared around the web. I don't think it's a huge concern. I've never had any issues. It's just kind of like a best practice. And I wouldn't get an image designer, for example, who's only doing image design or video editing or something to sign a non-disclosure agreement, because they're probably not dealing with sensitive information. So you just need to use some common sense there. The next thing that I share with them is LastPass. So LastPass is one of the tools that I use to look after all my passwords, and by them using LastPass, they're able to use the passwords that I allow them to use, and without actually knowing what the password is. So that's a secure way of sharing access to different things. And then I train the virtual assistant on how Trello works. So in Trello, I'll typically have they're called boards, but the different board will have different things in it. So there's one board which might be the pipeline. And that's where I'll put a list of different tasks that are in the pipeline. And then I'll have another board called Up Next. And the Up Next board is where I put the different tasks which should be worked on next. And I will share a screenshot of what my Trello boards look like over on, along with the show notes as well, over at episode number 18. So you'll be able to check that out. But basically, there are certain tasks and certain boards that I control or that one of my managers control, and there are certain things that the virtual assistant will control. And I just want them to know which things they're in control of and which things they're not really in control of. The next thing I always make sure that I do is I pay on time. So as part of the onboarding, I make sure they know when they're going to be paid. Is it a weekly basis? Is it a monthly basis? Specifically on what day will that be? And I make sure that they're aware that I want detailed invoicing. So I want to know how long they spent on each task. In my business, I've got virtual assistants that sort of span multiple different areas. So they might be spending 5 hours one day working on one of my businesses, 3 hours the next day working on a different business, and I want to be able to assign those costs to the business that they were working on. So I make sure that the invoicing is detailed so that I know how much time they're spending on each business, and that can be accounted for accordingly. At the end of each week, me or one of my managers can review the task costs and how long things have taken, and this is really just a sanity check to make sure that things are taking the amount of time that I think they should be taking. I don't micromanage, and I don't film someone while they're working. There's tools out there like Hubstaff, which will actually record someone's screen while they are working, and that's overkill for me. I feel like I don't need that. It's self-correcting anyway, because if someone isn't getting the work done, then they're not going to continue to have the job, or maybe there's some other issue. But it always comes out in the wash, because when I'm reviewing how much has been done, I can see, or my manager, one of the managers in my teams can see if enough work has been done. And if enough work's been done, then that's fine. And then lastly, I make sure that I explain that I pay a little bit more to cover their costs incurred by the transaction. So sometimes, PayPal might charge a couple of percentage points or a couple of dollars or something, and I want to make sure that that's covered, and I'm taking care of that, not them. So that's an overview of the process I use. I'm going to wrap up this episode by sharing a few things that you can do to motivate your virtual assistant. And these are simple things, but they can really make a world of difference in the rapport that you build up and the effectiveness that you have in the relationship with your virtual assistant. So first and foremost, pay competitively and pay on time. You can hire people in the Philippines for $2 an hour. That's not going to attract the best people. So be aware of that. You might want to pay $4 an hour. You'll be able to start getting some decent talent for that. And then make sure that you communicate well about the time you will pay, and you actually pay on time. Consider sharing in worker benefits. This is something that we do for virtual assistants who have been with us for a while. We start giving them little top-ups to cover different things that their employers would normally pay for if they had a regular day job in the Philippines. And this includes things like health and worker benefits, and insurance and things like that. For people in the Philippines, they have what is called a 13th month of pay. And I still don't get this, but they do the same thing in Argentina for some weird reason. But essentially what it is it's like an extra month of pay. And it's like you would get, I guess it's like getting 10% more each year. And in December, instead of getting paid for 1 month worth of work, you get paid for 2 months. So this is something that I've started doing with our virtual assistants in the Philippines, and I think it's a good show of faith, and it makes their salary that much more competitive, and it shows them that I'm aware of what they're doing. And I mean, this might mean an extra $500 over the course of a year, but it can be great for them, and it's like a bonus lump sum. So that's something to consider. Give them a raise when they deserve it. I mean, this is just like any regular employee. I mean, people gain experience, gain know-how, and get better over time, and you can reward that once in a while with a raise. You can provide other incentives. So in the past, we've done things where we have covered the internet allowance or travel or equipment. for our people that we've got in the Philippines. And again, these are small little perks, but it can mean the world to someone who is living in the Philippines. Agree on paid days off. So in the Philippines, they have about 20 public holidays per year. Hard to imagine how people there get any work done at all with so many public holidays. It's actually similar to that in Argentina as well, I might add. So I am familiar with that. However, local businesses there will pay on public holidays. So in our business, we do the same. If someone is a virtual assistant, we respect their public holidays and we pay them. We know they're not going to be working that day, but we just want to be competitive and make sure that we're a good person to work for. Maintain an open door policy. So this is all about communication. It encourages transparency. It's going to help build up rapport and just build up that relationship that you've got with your team. Be clear about tasks and be open for questions as well. And I mean, this is an extension of that open door policy. Another thing you can do, and this doesn't cost you anything, is just to express appreciation for a job well done. When something's done well, let them know that the job has been done well. And finally, the 10th goal or the 10th tip for you to motivate your virtual assistant in the Philippines is to share your company goals and share the vision, share why it is that you're doing what you're doing. It's easy just to hand off tasks without any rhyme or reason, but I tell you what, you'll get much better performance when the person that's doing the work for you understands the bigger picture here. So I think that's important. So final tips. Get to know your virtual assistant like you would get to know someone in a real office environment. I think it's useful to know, do they have kids? What's their work routine? Do they work at night? Do they work in the mornings? Understand different family constraints. Understand that sometimes in the Philippines, they get hit by massive storms and flooding and, internet can drop out. If you've got an open line of communication, these things can become non-issues. Whereas if you just have your worker disappear for 3 days, without any warning, then that can be a little bit disconcerting and frustrating. But you won't get that happen if you've got that open line of communication. Be aware that when you're hiring someone, you are potentially changing their life, by giving them this kind of work. And you need to be careful that you don't, get their hopes up, I think, and then pull the rug from underneath them without any warning. Be patient, help them learn. I've found that the talent in the Philippines is absolutely amazing, and I really like using tools like Loom.com and Skype for calls because I feel like these are really easy to use and easy to convey information. So that's a wrap for this episode. I hope you have enjoyed not just this episode, but episode number 17 as well, which is where we started talking about outsourcing. We've got so much more of this in the pipeline, and there are many, many more resources over at thegrowthbooth.com. Make sure you head over there, go to episode number 17 and also episode number 18. This is episode number 18, and you'll see many more resources that you can use to get started with outsourcing and indeed to help you hire a virtual assistant. That's a wrap for this episode. I will see you in the next episode.